We good? All right, let's go to Ecclesiastes 5. Again, I would review, but what's the point? it's, it's just futile. What's next? What's next? It's futile. So, huh? It's just a weird book that is just, like I said, if you're at all suicidal, don't come to the Ecclesiastes Bible study. All right, and be like, well, I guess I was right. So, all right, we ready? All right, first word out of the box: guard, 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 guard your steps. Here's what I want you to see real quick, and you may pick up on this. The blue that you see up here, you act like I don't study. See, you think all I do is show up for 15 minutes a week. All right, all the blue words up here are anatomical body parts, okay? And so what Solomon supposedly is doing with this is he's using a lot of these body parts to identify sort of emotions and characteristics and all these things. So he'll say, guard your steps, which we see, they translate as guard your steps. This is what I don't like about the Holman. They tend to translate it so that it's almost as if, well, what he meant to say was this. And so they don't translate it literally sometimes, that they just go ahead and complete the thought, but they don't make it literal, which I wish they would leave it literal a lot of times, because I think sometimes they skip a step that poetically it would read better, but they kind of solve the problem for you, which I don't really like, but that's what that is. But like, I just wanted you to see this, so as we go through it, I'll point these out to you. The first one is there, and guard your steps. It's basically watch your feet, is what he's saying. Guard is it's the Greek word philasso, all right? It's the Hebrew word shamar. It means just to pay attention, to watch. Philasso is literally the jailer in Philippi. He was the philasso. He was the one who was watching over the jail. So Solomon writes, guard your steps or watch your feet when you go or walk to the house of God. It's better to draw near in obedience than to offer the sacrifice of fools, or offer the sacrifice as fools do, for they ignorantly do wrong. We have a different word for wrong there. I don't really like that translation. It's a Greek word, or excuse me, the Hebrew word ra, which means evil, that they do evil. The Greek word here is kakos. All right, we've talked a lot about that word. We'll see that word a couple of times, and we even get kalos. You'll see the differentiation in here. So let's look at this. So guard your steps, or guard your feet, watch your feet when you go to the house of God. Now, what would be Solomon's understanding of the house of God? Translate that. The temple, yeah. He's right there in Jerusalem. He even states that he is in Jerusalem in chapter 1. Okay, he's the king in Jerusalem. So watch yourself when you go to the house of God, to the temple. It's better to draw near in obedience than, okay, so just obey, than to offer, and this is the phrase, the sacrifice of fools. Aphron, to not think. Phron is phroneo, to think. To a phroneo, the one who doesn't think, the one who just utters the sacrifice of fools. Now, what is that? What's the sacrifice of a fool? He's going to unpack this for you. So what it's going to be is when you make a vow. So he's saying, watch yourself. It's better for you to just show up in an obedient manner, obediently, doing obedient things, not breaking the law, not violating the covenant, all these things, than to show up and start saying, oh, God, I promise I will do this, this, and this. Okay? God would rather you just be obedient than you promise to do X, Y, and Z, or to offer X, Y, and Z, or to do all these things, okay? For they ignorantly, or not knowing, do this evil. The fool makes all these vows, and this is evil. It's kakos, it's ra, it's evil, it's wrong, all right? 2, do not be hasty to speak, all right? And this is one of those, again, another one of those anatomical terms. Do not be hasty with your mouth. Your stomati, all right? Don't be hasty with your mouth, and do not be impulsive to make a speech before or in the face. Again, you see this? the way he uses these terms, in the face or before God. All right? First commandment says what? You shall have no other gods, panim, in front of my face. Okay? You see what I'm saying? How the translation, they kind of solve it for you. Before is, well, what he's saying is don't have it in my face. Well, he's saying don't have it before me. Now, do you see how you kind of, I like the poetic nature of don't put this in front of my face. Okay? It has a little more meaning to me. It can be, and it because we think, oh, in order, all right? You should have God first, and then the other things follow, because nothing should be before God. They can all be after God. No, that's not what it's saying at all, right? You shall have no other gods, panim, in front of my face, okay? In the Greek word there is prosopon, okay, if you wanted to know, all right? So do not be hasty to speak or to mouth, all right? Do not be impulsive to make a speech before God. God is in heaven, and you are on earth, so what? You've heard that phrase, that song before? Who sings that? You're God in heaven, so let your words be few. I forget who sings that song. Definitely not me. So, all right. So don't be impulsive to make a speech or your words before the face of God. God is in heaven, you are on earth, so let your words be few. Why? Because who shows up and just starts talking and talking and talking? If you have many words, what generally is going to happen eventually? And this is one thing, I speak, about an hour on this night and 45 minutes on Sunday, if not more, with announcements and stuff. Have I ever said anything foolish? Yeah. Have I ever? It actually gets me every now and then, or every week. And it's just, you shouldn't have said this. You shouldn't have said. I'm like, baby, I just talked for that long. Eventually, I'm going to say something wrong. I don't talk much the rest of the week, so this is my words. Oh, what was it that that Supreme Court thing?
It was the number of words spoken by each of the justices in the
Yeah.
arguments.
So there's this first case that comes before the Supreme Court, and it had, because what we have four women on the court now, and they counted up the actual words spoken by each of the justices in the oral argument, question and answer period, and they said, well, we definitely know that she is a woman because she, what was it, 11,000 words? Yeah, Clarence Thomas, 96. But that's, if you know the courts, that's Clarence Thomas. He never asked questions, so I was like, 96, wow. He must have said hello or something. That was about the extent of it. But it was like Sotomayor, Kagan, Barrett, and then the guys were, in the hundreds. None of them even got over 1,000. And then this new justice was 11,000. Okay, so not going there with the sexist thing at all tonight. So let your words be few. Why? Because this is, what does he call it? The sacrifice of fools. That's a scary thing. What? Yeah, better be silent, be thought a fool, than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. All right? It was that Abraham Lincoln, I think, originally said that phrase. Okay? So you see where he's going with this? Guard your feet, watch your feet when you go. Just be obedient. Don't offer the sacrifice of fools. All right? Don't be hasty to make a speech or to speak or to mouth. Don't be impulsive to make a speech. God's in heaven, you're on earth. So do the math, is what he's saying essentially. God's in heaven, you're on earth. He doesn't need your words. All right? This is kind of the Job. All right? I love Job. You know, it's a horribly depressing book to read, and it takes forever to go through it, and you're like, what is he trying to say? I don't get this. Well, you hit about chapter 38, and God's like, that's it. I've had enough. And it's, where were you when I did this, when I did this, when I did this, when I did this? And where were you when I did this, and where were you when I did this? And do you understand why I did this, and when I did this, and all this stuff? And after about 4 chapters of this, it's like Job crawls out from underneath the table and goes, I quit. I'm good. I'm sorry. I spoke when I should not have spoken. This is the idea that God is in heaven, you're on earth. So what? Let your words be few. Is that hard or is that easy? Or is it personality driven for us humans? I think just because you might be an introvert and you may not speak a lot, you're thinking a lot of words. I know I think a lot more words than I actually verbalize, okay? And so watch those words, watch those, guard your steps when you go. Verse 3, this is a reality. Hopefully you'll pick up on this reality. For dreams result from much work, all right? From much of your occupation, your job, this inyan in the Hebrew, and a fool's voice from many words. Anybody ever had a job that caused them to have dreams? Marcia, I know you worked in the food industry, all right? Ashley and I both worked at Chili's in seminary. We called them chili mares because if you got off your shift and went home and went to bed, you would dream about waiting tables all night long because it's a stressful job. Waiting tables is a stressful job. And so you would get home and it's like, you're dreaming, it's like, I forgot to get tea for this table and they needed ranch at this and I didn't get there. And oh, there was this table there and they did this and then they said this to me and I was like, why would they say that to me? And it's just 4 hours, 5, 6 hours of just stress, right, Marcia? Right. Yeah, it's working with people, all right? And so you go home, and my trick was it, and I also did this when I read philosophy in seminary. Anytime I had to read philosophy, I would have the craziest, weirdest dreams. And so I learned that if I had a tape of Andy Griffith show episodes, a VHS, I would put in the VHS and play the Andy Griffith, and I would get at least one episode of Andy Griffith, and I could go to bed and I wouldn't dream. I wouldn't do crazy dreams. So what he's saying this, dreams happen when there's a stressful work environment, and a fool's voice happens when he keeps talking. The more he talks, the more foolish his words are going to become. So let your words be few, okay? Does that mean you don't say anything? Does that mean you're just silent all the time? There's a time to speak, right? And a time to be silent. Just pick wisely. 4, when you make a vow, right, or when you vow a vow, remember when I talked about those, when you put the noun and the verb together, when you vow a vow, right? That's what he's doing right here. When you vow a vow to God, don't delay in fulfilling it or filling it up, because he does not delight in fools. So the expectation is what? When you go to the house of God and you make all these vows and make all these promises, and God, I promise I'll do this, and God, I promise I'll do this. What do they say, the old foxhole? There are no atheists in foxholes. Why? Because, God, I promise if you get me out of this, I'll do this, and I'll do this, and I'll do this. This is exactly what he's talking about, all right? Don't delay, because he does not delight in fools. Fulfill what you vow. Now, again, dial this back a little bit. Does it say at the beginning of this, make sure you make vows, but when you make the vow, make sure you fulfill it? At any point, does he encourage vow making? No. What does he encourage? Just obedience, all right? Just obey. That's all God wants, is just your obedience to his will. That's what he wants you to do. He's not looking for you to make all these crazy vows. And God, I promise I'll go to Africa on a mission trip if you'll help me win the lottery, blah, 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 all right? It's like, whatever. But when you do make the vow, what's God doing? Yeah. I remember just watching MASH, because I like to watch MASH all the time, all right? Because it has some credibility to it, I guess. It's not garbage like all the rest stuff. And Father Mulcahy always gets the guy, Father, what if I made a promise to God? Do I have to keep it? And Father Mulcahy always let him off the hook. And I'm like, no, leave him on the hook. Let him feel Ecclesiastes 5 here a little bit. Fulfill what you vow. 5, better that you do not vow than that you vow and not fulfill it. See how simple that was, all right? Do not let your mouth, here we go again, do not let your mouth bring guilt or sin on you, literally on your flesh. And do not say in the face or the presence of the messenger that it was a mistake. Why should God be angry with your words and destroy the work of your hands? Okay, now what is this? Do not say in the presence of the messenger. What's he talking about there? Everybody see this? 6, do not say in your mouth, do not let your mouth bring guilt on you, and do not say in the presence of the messenger, literally the angel is the good translation of it, that it was a mistake. What is it? The vow. So he's getting very practical. And it's as if he's saying there's going to be someone who comes to what? Collect. And you're saying, God, I promise I'll give you $10,000. I'll give $10,000 to the church if this. All right, you're making these vows. And he says, when the messenger shows up to collect, don't say, oh, it was a mistake. Don't put yourself in a situation where when the messenger shows up, you're going, well, I didn't really mean, that's what he's saying. Don't let your mouth bring guilt or sin on you, on your flesh. And do not say in the presence of the messenger it was a mistake. Why should God be angry with your words and destroy the work of your hands? Would God really be angry about this? And how would that manifest itself? The anger of God at making a vow and not completing it. Would that really happen? Or is this something God just gets over? And how often do we think God, he'll just get over it? He is just. Did he call for the vow? But you made it. And God is saying what? The writer of Ecclesiastes is saying, you need to be careful when you say that. You need to watch yourself. Guard your steps when you go into the house. Don't offer the sacrifice of fools. Let your words be few. Don't make this vow and then go tell the messenger, it was a mistake. I didn't mean what I said. Because God will be angry with you. Can you think of an episode in the Bible where a vow was made, it was not completed, and God was angry? Can you give me a specific? King Saul? The Amalekites? Okay. He did. And Samuel hacked King Agag to death. That's awesome. That's a VBS verse right there. Put that on a t-shirt. And King Agag was hacked to death by Samuel. All right? Yeah, give me another. Yeah. So does he get angry with them? And I want to be specific on this. Is there a moment? Can anybody remember a moment where a vow was made? God, I will do this. I promise to do this. It was not done, and God was angry and manifested that anger. Can anybody think of anything? Say it again. Adam and Eve. I don't know that the vow was made. The command was clearly given, and they did not, and God did manifest his anger by removing them from the tree of life and the garden. All right? Again, my question is, was a vow made? Again, I'm all with you on all these examples. There was clearly sin, there was clearly unrighteousness, and God responded to that unrighteousness. I think there is an implied vow when they return to rebuild the temple. And they get some opposition, and what happens? They quit, and they do what? They start to build their own houses. And Haggai shows up, he goes, oh, so it's not time to fulfill your vow to rebuild the temple like you told the king you would? that you told, yeah, we're going back, we're building this thing, it's going to be awesome. We build the foundation and everybody celebrates, and then opposition comes and we cut it off and we start building, we take all those materials and start building our own houses. And when Haggai shows up, he's like, whoa, what is this? Do you not realize that you have, you gather much, but you have little? This is that anger of God, I think. So that's my example, Haggai, just them coming back, Zerubbabel trying to rebuild the temple. Then he eventually does fulfill the vow that he had made, and it works out. That was just one that came to my mind, so I was just curious if anybody else had a better one. All right, 7. For many dreams bring what? Vanity, futility, all right? Because dreams are great, but if you don't put them into practice, if you don't do anything with them, they're just dreams. They're just whatever. Does anybody else just not remember dreams? It's like amnesia with me. I don't know. I will dream something, and then by 9 o'clock the next morning, I'm like, I have no idea what I dreamt. Couldn't tell you. Then some of them stick. I don't know. It's weird. Dreams are weird. But I love the fact that if we don't dream, we die. Anybody know that? If you don't dream, you'll die. You go crazy. They've done studies on this, that people will go crazy if they don't dream, if there's not something going on. I don't know. It's just weird. Dreams are weird, all right? God likes that stuff. All right, so do many words. So dreams bring futility. Many words bring futility. Therefore, here's a solution. What? Fear God. Does it say make vows and fear God? No, just fear God. You don't need to make vows. If you want to make a vow, that's awesome. But if you're going to make the vow, what's the stipulation? You are on record, all right? Don't ever think, well, I can just make a vow and God will get over it if I don't fulfill it. You need to be careful. You need to be very careful of that. I remember going into my senior year in high school. I was at camp. They had this program with the IMB. It was like, you know what, going into your senior in high school, you can spend the summer in between your senior and your freshman year on the mission field for a month, whatever, something like that. And I'm like, God, I'm all in with that. I'm going to do that. Filled out the application at camp, sent in all this stuff. And the more I started thinking about it, this is my foolishness of thinking, I thought, well, God, you know, I'm kicking in high school. I was all Big Ben last year. If it's going to be great this year, I'm going to get a scholarship. I'm going to be all state. I'm going to be all this. And I'm really not going to have time to go on the mission field in between this because I'll be getting ready to play ball in college. And God went, really? Well, I can fix that. And a week before the season started, doing some crazy drill, rolled my ankle all the way over. And so didn't end my season, but it might as well have. Just wasn't able to do what I needed to be able to do. Got back in the groove of, all right, I'll put that application in there. Started to get healthy again. Okay, I can't do it again because I'm back in the groove now. Oh, that knee. Let's see how big we can make that knee right before the playoff game. It was huge. I couldn't even bend my leg, all right? And, you know, that's anecdotal, but it was me doing what? Making the sacrifice of fools and not carrying through. And God didn't need me to make all those vows. He just needed me to be obedient to him. But when I started equivocating on those, and God does this to me. God, I'm on a real short leash with God. When I make promises and I don't fulfill them, God goes, that's it. Nope. Shutting that down. I kind of like being on a short leash because now I'm scared. And what's the last verse? Therefore, what? Fear God. Nope. It's not respect. It is fear.
Fear is in be afraid.
Absolutely. You better be. Because when you're not, what will you do? You think God will just get over it. Absolutely, it should be fear. This is the word David, when David is escorting the ark back, and Uzzah reaches out and dies. it says in that moment, David feared God. David didn't respect God. He didn't have a healthy, relationship with God at that point. No, he feared God. And I always tell people, this word Yahweh, and this is sort of the way I describe it, it's a combination of fear, awe, and beauty. So I see the beauty of God, I see the awe of God, and I see the fear of God. So I always say it's like being on a date with the most beautiful person you've ever been on a date with at the Grand Canyon, and a bear comes out of nowhere and attacks you. Now put all that together, and that's this word Yahweh. So is it fear God? Yeah, it better be. Because when we don't fear God, we think we can get away with things. And the second you start doing that is the second you'll start offering up the sacrifice of fools. All right? So yeah, and I say it more the idea of I don't want to give somebody the out of thinking, well, I don't really need to fear God. No, you do. You do need to fear God. All right? Now, is he a loving Heavenly Father who adores us more than anything on the planet? Absolutely. Should I be afraid of him? Absolutely. All right? And there's a balance there. All right? Let's keep going. All right? And basically the whole point is fear God so that you don't do stupid. All right? 8. He's going to change this. We got different stuff here tonight. So put that aside, that little paragraph aside. If you see oppression, all right? If you see oppression of the poor and perversion of justice and righteousness in the land or the province, don't be astonished. This is our word thomazo. Don't marvel. Remember Paul saying, I'm marveling, I'm amazed that you're turning away from the gospel. Same word right here, all right? Don't be astonished. Does it surprise anyone when you hear about the oppression of the poor? Should it? No, it's like Wednesday, all right? And he's saying, don't be astonished when you see the oppression of the poor, the perversion of justice, or righteousness in the land. You see the balance there? We get the good, the bad, and the ugly a little bit, all right? Don't be astonished at the situation, because one official protects another official, and high officials protect them. The profit from the land is taken by all. The king is served by the field. Now that's it's a weird phrase. It's hard to really do anything with it. It literally is saying the king becomes a slave of his own field. And that's a lot to put together right there. But what do you see in this? Corruption. And what does Solomon say about corruption? What's the implication he has here? If you see oppression of the poor, perversion of justice, and righteousness, don't be astonished. Why? Because people are corrupt, right? People are greedy, right? People are going to be dishonest, but they're also good. People are also righteous, right? Officials are going to protect one another. If you've been outside the United States, you see this much more clearly than you do in the United States, all right? What was it? Actually, you weren't allowed to go jogging in Ukraine, go for a run in Ukraine, because Ukrainians don't jog. Okay, it's just not what they do, all right? It's like they work hard for a living, not like us, all right? They don't go to gyms and they don't go for a run somewhere, all right? Because the whole implication was you'll get picked up by the police, and the police are corrupt, the officials are corrupt, and they would say, well, if you want to get your person out of jail or out of this, it may cost you a little bit. If you get $5,000, we can make this go away, or we can leave her here for 6 to 9 months and see what happens. It's just corruption, all right? And isn't that the nature of humanity? That's all he's saying. That's all he's saying. It's all corrupt. Even the king can't get away from this. Even the king may become a slave of his own land, all right, because of the corruption, because the profit of the land is taken by all. People grift off everyone, so that even the king is susceptible to this, okay? Now, The question is, what do you do? How do you govern people that are inherently corrupt and greedy and will lie and will cheat and will steal? Do you pretend like they won't lie, cheat, and steal? Or do you bake that into your laws? In the Pilgrims, when they first came over, they tried communism. They tried everyone according to their ability and everyone take according to their need. And does anybody know what they call that time? That first winter? The starving times. 90% of the Pilgrims died in the first winter. Why? Because when you don't bake greed and corruption into the cake, people are still going to be greedy and corrupt, all right? And that's the fallacy of a lot of people. And I tell Holland this all the time, and she hates it. I say, greed is normal. And greed can be good. Because, if you make good rules and make good laws that protect against this avarice of greed and this extreme of greed, well, now you got a good system. It's called capitalism. And it works because everybody's being greedy, trying to get as much as they can for themselves, and it balances everybody out. But when you try to ignore corruption, what's going to happen? You're going to be the one, all righteous, going, why does this not work? Why are you so stupid? All right? People are greedy. People are corrupt, and they're going to see this, okay? 10, the one who loves money is never satisfied with money. Amen? It's not, you'd think we would figure this out at some point, all right? No matter how much you have, you're never going to have enough. And whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is futile. So does that mean you should quit your job and just let other people take care of you? No, you just need to know it's never going to satisfy you. So if you give your life to gain it, even if you do gain it, what's it going to mean? Nothing. It's still futile, all right? 11, when good things increase, the ones who consume them multiply. Anybody have a story about that one? When good things increase, the ones who consume them multiply. The lottery winner, how many relatives come out of the woodwork? Hey, that's my uncle. I know him, all right? When good things increase, the ones who consume them multiply. Feeding of the 5,000. What happens the next day? According to John, what happens the next day? They're looking for him. And Jesus says what? You're looking for me because you want the buffet. When good things increase, the ones who consume them multiply. All right? Isn't that called greed? Yeah, just accept it. What then is the profit to the owner except to gaze at them with his eyes? So what profit is the owner? I get all this stuff and all this profit comes my way, and here comes the vultures. Here come the grifters. They're going to come every time because greed is normal. 12, different little subject. The sleep of the worker is sweet, whether he eats little or much, but the abundance of the rich permits him no sleep. Interesting. The sleep of the worker. All right. Now, what he's talking about is just the common man. All right. And he sleeps well, whether he eats a whole lot or he just eats a little. Why does he sleep so well as opposed to the rich? And why do the abundance of the rich, not just the rich, but the abundance of the rich permits him no sleep? Why does one sleep well and one not sleep well? Stress? Yeah. All right. Absolutely. Why? Because that's what he's obsessed with. All right. You got to keep it. You got to protect it. You can't let go of it. But the one who works hard for a living sleeps pretty well. I think it's a Confucius saying that a good conscience is the best pillow. That's why I sleep so well, right, Ashley? Boom. She's watching TV. I'm like, Gone. 5 seconds later, I'm out. Good conscience is a good pillow, all right? Again, it's the same theme that keeps running through this. All right, 13. There is a sickening, this is literally the word to get sick, all right? A sickening evil or sickening tragedy I've seen where? Under the sun, all right? Wealth, and this is what it is, wealth or treasure, riches, kept, same word as guard, kept to keep to guard, by its owner to his evil, to his kakos. Okay, now let's think about that for a second. There's a sickening tragedy I have seen under the sun. Wealth, somebody having money, and it causes him kakos or evil. He says, this is a sickening tragedy. And Solomon's watching this, and he's seeing people who are wealthy, and it's destroying them. Why is this such a sickening tragedy? What should wealth bring you? Theoretically, it should bring what? Happiness. All right? Because all of us that are poor are thinking what? I sure wish I had a little more. All right? I sure wish I had this and wish I had this and wish I had money in the bank. All right? I wish I could pay this bill. I wish I could go on this vacation or buy that boat or do this or do this or do this. And he says, this is a sickening tragedy. Wealth kept by its owner to his own harm. One thing I did when we first walked into the doors of this church, I went to Dan Crowder. I said, we got too much money in the bank. We need to give most of what we have in the bank away. We got to get it out of the building. Because one of the principles I knew was I did not want us to have a pile of money in this church to our own harm. All right? I wanted us to give it away so that we trusted God. We trusted y'all's offerings, your gifts, your tithes, all of those things. That's what I did not want us to be. Well, it doesn't really matter if our people tithe because we have this nest egg sitting over here. All right? I wanted to get it out of the building, all right? Because I did not want us to slip into any of those things. 14, that wealth was lost in a bad venture, okay? Venture, that word is the word for occupation or job. So it's not so much a risky scheme, but more of just a general losing of this money. So when he fathered, okay, so put this together. That wealth, the wealth that was kept by its owner to his own harm, that wealth was lost, all right, loosed, just it flew away in a bad venture, an evil occupation. So when he fathered a son, he was empty-handed. So that wealth was evil. He lost it. He fathered a son, and what did he have to give the son? Okay, you got to understand, in this culture, to not be able to give your child an inheritance was an absolute shame. A completely dishonorable thing to look at your son and go, good luck. I got nothing for you. One thing I've been very conscious of, because when my dad died, we couldn't even find his will, which was like, we found bulletins from like 1963, all right, everywhere, all right? We couldn't find his will. And then we couldn't find any life insurance. He was 75? Yeah, no, 74. What, almost 75. No life insurance. No nothing. He had a house that we barely sold, almost gave it away, right? But he had nothing really to pass down to my brother and I. And I was like, that doesn't seem like what my dad would have done, all right? My dad was a student of Scripture, just knew Scripture, just read it all the time. But he didn't have anything to pass down to us, which I just found, it wasn't like I was going, all right, Dad died, let's cash in. But I thought I expected him to have had some provision for us. And this is what we're seeing here. He has this son, but he has nothing to give him. So I made sure I've got good life insurance. Unfortunately, it ends when I turn 80. And so we told our kids that a couple of years ago, and they said, 80. Yeah, they know exactly the date. They know exactly the date of when they need to rub me out, all right? So So yeah, but that was my thing. So when I went through that with my dad, I was like, I am absolutely going to make sure that we are taken care of, and that this is good. And our insurance salesman tried to sell us insurance or life insurance for Ashley, and I said, sir, honestly, if she were to die, I'll make a lot more of her not spending our money than I would if I got a life insurance policy. So I'm good. So we're good with her. So we have a token life insurance policy for her. So, but the kids are going to try and rub me out. All right. Because I don't get Social Security either. Do you know that? It's pretty awesome. Ministers, ordained ministers, you in or out? Social Security. You kind of have to be in, don't you? Yeah. As an ordained minister, you have 2 years to opt out of Social Security. I am officially a conscientious objector to the Social Security system. And as a minister of the gospel, I'm allowed to do that. So I have opted out of Social Security. And so I get to take all my money and put it into a retirement account. And when I die, my kids get all of it. Heck yeah. Heck yeah, I will. And your kids, if you die tomorrow, they get a nice little, $750 check? $250. But it did go up this year, right? I guess that's the cost of inflation. Did you get your increase? Somebody was telling me, yeah, Social Security's going up. I said, well, it's tied to inflation, this consumer price index. So yeah, your eggs cost $5 a dozen now, so you get a little bonus there. So it's all good, right? Good. Dale, you going to charge me more for my eggs now? So, all right, where were we? See, we're trying to have a little fun with Ecclesiastes, and we're drifting into politics here. All right. Okay, 15. As he came from his mother's womb, this is the old U-Haul. Never seen a hearse carrying a U-Haul or pulling a U-Haul. As he came from his mother's womb, so he will go again. Naked as he came, he will take nothing for all his efforts, his suffering, his struggle that he can carry in his hands. This, too, is a sickening tragedy. Exactly as he comes, so will he go. What does one gain who struggles for the wind? All right? He's throwing that word struggle, we get that a lot, right? This laborious struggling, we see this. And Solomon is sitting up in his ivory tower watching the little peons doing what all day long? That guy's struggling, laboring. Amal is what it is in the Hebrew, amal. And he just sees him working so hard all day long. But they sleep well at night, right? And they don't have the troubles of the rich person over here who is just waiting for somebody to steal their stuff. So he sees all of the tragedies of life and the evil, the evil of life. So what does one gain who struggles for the wind? 17. What is more? He eats in darkness all his days with much sorrow, sickness, and anger. Isn't this a great book? This is awesome. Because that's what he sees. And he sees this. This is kakos. This is harm. Look at this whole 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. It's just, man, it just gets worse and worse. This sickening tragedy after sickening tragedy. And you just live in darkness. You eat in darkness. All right, very symbolic. All your days with much sorrow, sickness. That word sickness is choli in the Greek. K-H-C-H-O-L-I. We get our word colic from this. It's almost the same word in the Greek. We get our word colic. So this sickness or this anger. So if you have a sick, angry baby, you say he's what? Colicky? Yeah. Anybody else been there? All right. Yeah. All right. So that's the greatness of life right there. But then in 18, he says, but here's what I've seen to be good. All of that was kakos, but this is kalos. All right, K-A-L-O-S in the Greek. So kakos is what? Kakos is evil, bad, horrible, harmful. Kalos is beautiful, excellent, wonderful. So Solomon gets a little schizophrenic sort of in his thinking here. So this is all bad. Life is all bad. In your darkness, you're going to eat, and you have sickness, sorrow, and pain, and anger. But here's what I've seen to be good. It is appropriate. It's beautiful, all right, to eat, drink, and experience good in all the labor, the struggle one struggles with under the sun during the few days of life God has given him, because that is his reward. So is it kakos? Is this life kakos? Or is it kalos? Is it full of eating in the dark with sorrow, sickness, and anger and pain? Or is it, you know what? I'm going to eat and drink, and I'm going to experience the good, the tob, all right, the agathos in the Greek, that God has given me, and that's my portion, my lot in life, maybe a euphemism there. Which is it? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's what he sees. And I sometimes wonder if, as Solomon is looking down, he sees the guy shoveling out the stalls all the days of his life. And then he goes home to his wife, and his kids run up and they greet him as he comes in the door. And he doesn't have a lot to eat, but it's good. And he sleeps really well. And he gets up the next day and he goes out and he struggles and works hard. But at the same time, people die, and there is sickness and there is sorrow. And he does get a bad back from shoveling stalls, and it's sickness and it's sorrow and it's pain. So what's the difference? How do we balance this out? Let's keep reading. Let me finish out this chapter, and then I'll ask that question one more time. 19. God has also given riches and wealth to every man, and he has allowed him to enjoy it and to enjoy them. Take his reward and rejoice in his labor, his struggle. This is a gift of God. It's a Hebrew word, matah, all right? Levi, the tax collector, was nicknamed Matthew, meaning the gift, all right? For he does not consider or remember or constantly bring to mind the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with the joy of his heart. That's a very interesting thought right there, all right? He does not consider, this is man, all right? Man's just been given all this as a gift. He does not often consider the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with the joy of his heart. Is that true? How often do we get occupied with things that are not joyful? And how often do we lose the joy of the moment in the memory of the days of our lives? This is very wise. I mean, this is really deep stuff right here. And it's almost as if God's saying, you know what? That was yesterday. What's today? I'm going to distract you from yesterday, either the good or the bad. Because what happens when we get caught up in the good old days and then we live in this day? What happens if we get caught up in the bad old days and we're trying to live in this day? You see how both of them can be detrimental? And Solomon kind of steps back and he says, you know what? The gift of God is he doesn't make you live in the past. He lets you move on to the future. He lets you move into the moment. And you can choose whether to live in the joy of this moment or the sorrow of this moment. And you can appreciate both come your way. It's very, very deep, very, very interesting thing. And I love the way he does 18 through 20. And I think this is the pivotal moment in Ecclesiastes, where he kind of steps back and goes, you know what? It's not all futile. It's not all futile. He never mentions the futility of it in this little paragraph. He looks at it and he says, it's good. This life is good. But it's good if you live in the moment. It's good if you don't dwell on the past, either good or bad. But there's this, he keeps him occupied with the joy of his heart in the moment, I think is the way I would add to that. All right? So again, is this life good? Kalos? Or is it bad? Kakos? It is. It really is how you choose. What you choose to look at. What you choose to see. How you choose to experience it. That's why, and I've said this 100 times, it's just your earth story. It's not going to last forever. It's a vapor. It's a breath. And you get to live it to the glory of God. And when we get to heaven, God's going to say, well done, good and faithful servant, because you chose to live this thing right. You chose, even though it was full of sickness and sorrow and pain, you got up, you worked hard, and you lived in the joy of the moment. You looked for, you searched for, you pursued the joys of this life. And the good old days and the bad old days didn't keep you from living in the present day. And so, like I said, Solomon has a moment right here where he shifts gears and goes, you know what? God is the author of this life, and he didn't screw it up. And it's not useless, and it's not wasted. What does he call it? It's a gift. But it depends on how you choose to live it. All right? See, it's not futile. Everybody happy now? It's still futile. Yeah, but man, it's going to be awesome. I mean, that's one thing I'm always challenging myself with. How am I living this life? I want to live this life because I see it my way. My life, for me, this is a test. This is a test. Am I faithful to God? Do I have faith in God? Do I trust him? Is God sitting up there in heaven going, man, look at him go. Look at him trust me. Look at him rely on me. Look at him, the way he pursues these things in his life. How is he loving his wife? How is he loving his kids? Does he get angry about petty, stupid little things? Does he take cheap shots at people? Does he do all of these things? I want to live this life, this earth story, in the best way I can. And be faithful. And I want God to be proud of me every single day. And I don't want to live this life of, well, God knows what's going to happen. He knows what I'm going to do, and blah, blah, blah. I hate that. All right? Anybody else remember waking up on Mother's Day morning and you making all sorts of noise in the kitchen because making breakfast for Mom on Mother's Day was like the thing, and you're going to surprise her again and again, year after year? You're going to surprise her with breakfast even though you've made all this noise? That's the way I want to live this life. With the idea that I can actually surprise God, that I can marvel God, that God will look at me like he looks at several characters in the New Testament, and God was amazed at their faith. I think that's a choice we have, all right? I may be wrong, and it may be God knows what I'm going to do, and he knows all this and knows all this. I'm just not going to live that way. I want to live with the potential to be able to amaze God. That's going to be a good life, all right? And I'll sleep well at night, right? Amen. All right, anything else? See, it's not all bad. Probably next week, probably back in the gutter. All right, let's pray. Father, thank you for just allowing us to work through these scriptures. Father, I thank you for Solomon just kind of showing us and pointing this out to us, and just the wisdom that he had. Father, I pray that you would help us to gain a good perspective on this life, that we would live it to your honor and to your glory, that we would rejoice in the moments, that we would be sad, that we would be true to our emotions, but Father, that we would see that this is all a beautiful gift that you've given us, that we get to wake up each morning and do and be beautiful people, honoring you in all that we say and do. Father, I thank you again for these disciples who just want to learn the scriptures, want to know more about your scriptures and more of your will and more of your character. So again, Father, reward them for the time they've spent here tonight. And I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.